I'm Dr. Lorraine Madway, the Curator of Special Collections and the University Archivist at Wichita State University Libraries. We're here in the reading room and we're going to look at the Federal Writers Project, Records for Kansas. The Federal Writers Project was part of the WPA and it started in 1935. Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed the papers in the summer of 1935. The idea was that they would document the past and present history of every state and many cities within each state, not only because there was an awareness that modern culture was changing the cultural and social map forever of the country, but also because the editors and organizers of the project wanted to inspire people that a sense of what we would reclaim our greatness and our vision. And it was really a representation of American national identity, and that was done on a local level. Both of these essays, and there were at least 800 of these different essays written. These essays were written by Arthur Foster, who was an essayist and an area supervisor for several of the counties. And while Wichita was one of the main area offices, you could see that there were several other regional offices, among them Harper and several others like El Dorado and Hutchinson. And so this particular piece, he was a newspaper reporter, but like a lot of people who had to go on relief, he did whatever work he could do in the few years after the Depression hit and before he was able to get a job writing for the project. And he included a story of his own family, and so you could see not only when they came out here, but how they had to adapt to very hard times. They were farmers, but it wasn't easy to hold on to a farm or to make a living from it. People commonly say the wheat crop is ruined and that hard times are bound to follow the loss of our big export crop. And so we're aware of the difficulties too. Weather is always a factor, but particularly in the Depression and the Dust Bowls that occurred in the mid-1930s, particularly in 1935. As I said, the project wanted to capture a whole range of people. So he found a tramp. We would call this person a homeless person. Then they used the words like tramp and hobo. And he starts speaking to him, and the man is very forthcoming. And Lester Adams is describing the saga that he led him ultimately to become homeless. Their family lost their farm, and different jobs dried up as the economy got worse. And he would have to hop on trains, which is what people did. And finally, he finds his way, and he'll work temporarily for different farmers, either to get food and a place to live. Sometimes he'd get wages. And what I thought was really significant was when in the collection he says he's talking about politics, and he then says, at the end, some of these men are communists, of course. I have heard them talk, and they are really similar to a labor union. But in the last election, they failed to cast many votes. They are neither for nor against religion, as it does not concern communism. I am a Republican myself. This is very Kansas. There was actually a very active two-party contest. Kansas had quite a few Democrats then too that we had. It was in 1936 we supported FDR and rejected our own native son and beloved governor Alfred Landon. So and there were Democratic senators and Democratic governors, as well as a very well represented Republican Party as well. But this is significant because you really get a sense of the equanimity of the project, that they are capturing people, and the people that they're talking to are willing themselves to hope. They have not only been inspired by President, by Roosevelt, who was doing this, but it was clear in going through these collections that there is a real sense of resilience among people in Kansas, that they had come, many of their grandparents or the older pioneers, they themselves had come out. They saw themselves taming this land, bringing civilization as they knew it. They were fiercely devoted to their communities, their families. They didn't want to leave. The dust storms were not as bad here. They were certainly bad enough, but not as bad as in Oklahoma. And while the state did lose population during the 1930s, most people stayed. They did their best to stay. Their neighbors helped each other. And so the fact that they're finding a tramp, they're also finding people who are willing to reach out and give him some food, give him meals, so that he can be self-reliant and at least take care of himself. And he is, you still see a sense in this collection that he is his own man. He is his own person. He can talk about his past, about his present. He still has a sense of who he is, and these hard times have not worn away the basic core of who Lester Adams is. So I thought that was very significant as well. Another collection that we have in special collections is the Robert T. Aitchison Rare Book Collection. Aitchison was an illustrator and the manager of the McCormick Armstrong Publishing Company. He collects about 500 rare books. Many of them are dealing with images. They're dealing with different parts of printing and calligraphy that are important to him. Also artifacts. I'm going to show you the oldest material from the Aitchison collection. As I mentioned before, he collected artifacts as well. We have some older artifacts too. We have examples of Egyptian papyri that we've acquired since. This is significant, this Buddhist prayer scroll, because paper was actually invented in the Far East, in China, and this scroll dates from 1770, either CE, Common Era, or AD, as it's often known, Anno Domini, but CE is the more inclusive term. And you're going to see a series of charms that were written on a scroll, and this is when they are flattened out, this is what they actually look like, written in Japanese, which reads from right to left. And this was made in a box so that the box itself, just like the book box I showed you earlier, is itself artifact and part of, in a way, an extension of the object. So if you looked at it, you might not know quite from the beginning how to open it, and that's part of the mystery, the treasure that they want to convey. So it opens on the top, and it has to be very carefully arranged. This is archival quality cotton to make sure that it's as pure as possible. And we lift off the cotton, and we're going to remove the scroll itself, which is also very intricate. This is the lid. This will be for part of the scroll. And we unwind the various layers. When one of our visiting lecturers from Japan heard that we had this prayer scroll, he had to make a special visit to special collections, because he was amazed and enthralled, not only that we had it here in Wichita, but that we knew what it was, and that it was part of a collection that had been here for many decades, and that it was an intricate part of a collection that was documenting the history of printing and calligraphy. And if you would show the camera on top, you see the scroll is wound there, and it has many different charms and displaying, again, giving advice about what people need to do. And the these different scrolls of charms were sent to different temples throughout Japan, and the particular ruler, empress at the time, made sure that this kind of material would be circulated. So it shows in this part of the world the high level of culture and advancement. Remember, this is the 8th century. There are many parts of Europe where people are illiterate. We have the Islamic and Jewish cultures where there's a high rate of literacy, and in the Far East where paper is devised and circulated before. There's manuscripts circulated in Europe on vellum and leather, but the fact that this kind of paper is devised in the 8th century is really evidence of this high level of cultural development, and it's an integral part of why Aitchison knew how significant it was to acquire something like this. So I think that this is nothing short of amazing. Books and papers and manuscripts are some of the most powerful sources of information there are, because not only do we get a window into worlds that are no longer with us, but we can chart how we are like them, how we are different, how the journey socially and politically and economically brought us from those points. But the points for historians and for viewers of how we are the same and how we are different is really what makes this journey endlessly fascinating and always worth taking, and there's always something new to learn.